Hey everyone, Butley here. I'm with Patch. How you doing, Patch?
I'm good, thank you.
That's good. We are into our 9th episode of Tactics Ogre. Admittedly, we had a few days break. We actually caught up in person. In case you can't tell, we record from different parts of the state. What I thought we might do, since we're playing through the story, and obviously we do not hinge on watching the story religiously, I thought I might do a quick preview of what's in store. So that way at least we've covered the grassroots of the story, and to anyone interested in what Tactics Ogre is as opposed to just listening to us chat, that way they get a bit of an idea of what's going on. So this episode is a fair bit of inventory faffing around and a little bit of reading of stories and the lore and the codex. And in between, there is one big battle against a cool guy with some cool creatures. It's sort of a mercenary. I kind of like him. I actually think, Patch, you will really enjoy this character. For reasons I am not going to explain, but now we're about to find out. So if we just take a minute. Yeah. We actually have a fairly small team at this point, which is something we will need to work on, but I have reasons for this, and I will explain them as they come. It won't be this episode. Admittedly, I guessed wrong in this map originally, so this is actually the second attempt at this battle. I thought I had a different enemy to fight, and I was wrong. We're up to 9 units in our army now. That's cool.
Just wondering if you've judged my character correctly, or okay, I can tell I can already like him.
Oh, you'll see. I like how he whistles them. Anyway, that's pretty much it. He has pet griffins. I thought that was cool.
I'm moderately fond of that. Not my most toppest of things. I think we should have a talk about our favorite RPG classes someday.
I just thought you would appreciate the idea that he's a bit different and he has pets.
Yeah.
But I like it though. This is the cool thing about this game, because there's so many battles. You can have something like that where you have a beastmaster or a different type of enemy or a mercenary or someone random. Like, there's plenty of variety. This guy having beasts as opposed to just more soldiers for us to fight is variety, and it makes it interesting. Yeah. This is a really tough battle as well, from what I remember of it. I can't remember exactly. I recorded it a few days ago, but it's tough. Anyway,
well,
look. So
yeah.
We're just going to soldier on through that. Not much else to say. You've seen this team fight before. There's nothing too new or unique. At the start, I just traded some items around. You sort of, as you level up, you can access more items. So you sort of just got to keep trading up. I think the big problem in this battle is that we don't control Vice or Ravenous, so they kind of go and do their own thing, which causes me no end of problems. So it's basically me chasing them around. I have a look at the Griffins here. They have completely different moves, which is kind of cool, and they're like all the beasts. They are extremely tanky and hard to defeat, so they cause a lot of trouble as well. And this guy is a reptile. I can't remember if I go and look or not. And they have weird names. More weird than the normal names.
It's just the culture, man.
Yeah. Yeah, what am I, racist, right?
Yeah.
I like how his little sprite has a beard. What was I looking for? I was just looking at his abilities to see if he had any buffs for his creatures, and he doesn't yet. Anyway, last time we were talking about Pokemon, right?
Yeah, and we sort of stopped on Gen 3. Worth mentioning, since that video, I have learned a few more things about Gen 3. Specifically, there were lots of small, minor details about the combat that it did really improve over Gen 2. Little things, I can't remember them specifically, but just little things that really built on the game that did sort of fixed the combat a little bit more. So I guess I was a little bit wrong in some of the things I said, is all I'm trying to say.
If I understand correctly, and people in the know will murder me for saying this blindly, Generation 3, say 2010-ish, is where Pokemon really got like a competitive scene. Like, it always sort of had one, but this is where it really, like, this is where they started having tournaments and things like that a bit more. I don't know, a bit
Gen
more
3,
widely accepted. Yeah.
2010.
Sorry.
Hold on,
I'm
I'm gonna look this up. I have a feeling it came out sooner than that.
Yeah, it probably
great.
did, but I think that was around when the tournaments became sort of more.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Yeah, because Gen 3 came out like 2002.
Right.
I actually did look this up recently because I was having a discussion about the generations.
No, that's fair enough. When was Gen 4 out?
I don't know. It was probably 2 or 3 years after that.
Okay.
They come out around every 2 or 3 years, I think.
No, fair enough.
Although-
I just heard a thing that was talking
Oh, no.
about.
Yeah, 4 years after that, so 2006.
Okay. I just
Well,
had
there
a
you go.
notion that Gen 3 was sort of where they refined the competitive. What do you call it? Some of the competitive. Like, they balanced it a bit better, where it became a bit easier to play, whereas it wasn't
Yeah.
just sort of everything's more powerful or certain things more powerful and whatnot.
No, I'm betting it was Gen 4 that did all that. It really got the motor running.
Well, fair enough. I don't know. Like I said, I was
Yeah.
a bit hazy on the things. Maybe it was just some of the legendaries and stuff that carried over to the later 2000s, in that first decade of the 2000s.
Well, I think we should talk about Gen 4 then, because Gen 4 was really a big deal.
Right. Well, there's only one place you could start, and I know Patch gets sick of me saying this, but physical special split, right?
Yep. No, I'm agreeing. This is what we came here to talk about, physical special split, and how it changed Pokemon for the better.
It certainly was, in my opinion, the biggest change. If there are two things that changed how Pokemon from, say, Gen 1 to Gen 6, like how it worked as a game, the first one was traits, which I believe came in talent, or what do you call it? You know, like...
I'd disagree. I'd say that's easily like third at best.
What's the other one?
Breeding changed how Pokemon was played massively.
Yeah, true. That's fair enough. So they're probably the top three, though. I don't like.
Yeah.
I don't think there's too many more. Like, yeah, there's details on this and that and moves. Like, you could say adding in the extra types is probably in that range as well. But there's not that many things that totally changed the game and how the game played. They just sort of improved it.
These things definitely changed the game in big ways.
So our top four is like the physical special split, breeding, adding a trait or ability, and
ability, I think it is.
Yeah, I couldn't remember what it was called. And crikey, what was the last thing I just said? How bad am I this morning?
It's physical special split, breeding, and abilities.
Right. And then adding the new types is the other one I mentioned that I think is probably about that. But Gen 4, yeah, it was the one that really brought in the physical special split. To the uninitiated, basically originally the game had attack, defense, speed, and special operated as attack and defense for special attacks and defense. But what was a special attack? A special attack was determined by the type it was, so fire would be a special attack, whereas rock would be a physical attack. And that kind of makes sense, but then the game kind of grew and it sort of doesn't make a lot of sense anymore. So they changed it so that... first I have to mention, in Generation 2, they split the special stat to have special attack and special defense. So obviously how much you deal with special attacks versus how much you receive from special attacks. And then Gen 4, they went further and they said, okay, now a rock move, for example, it could be physical or it could be special depending on what it is. And they went through every ability and gave it either a physical or a special note. And so now you had the full range of attack and defense and special attack and defense, and also attacks that could be physical or special and use those abilities. And that created a whole different approach to some Pokemon and how you could build your teams and what you could do with them.
It sure did. Just like, it's so hard to state what this really did, because it's sort of hard to comprehend without actually playing the battle system and without understanding a lot of the more deeper concepts. But it did allow the game to have far more depth than it had prior to it. Like, the amount of depth it added to how you could play is just astounding from a technical point.
I wish could you think of, say, a good example of something that got majorly changed by either splitting special into attack and defense and or splitting attacks into attack and defense?
Well, splitting special, the big one would be Alakazam, Abracadab, and Alakazam.
Right.
They were ridiculous. They were, in the first generation, they were some of the most strong Pokemon. They had very high speed, and they had very high special, which meant they both resisted special damage and dealt a lot of it. So, and they were psychic, so all their damage was basically special. And that made them just really potent all round. They didn't really have a flaw or weakness, but by splitting physical and special defense, it allowed them to have slightly less good stats. I think they were more offensive than defensive.
Definitely more offensive.
After that. Yeah, and that made them, it brought them down to a level where they just weren't nearly as potent, and that definitely sort of balanced them in that regard. As for physical special split for abilities, it's really hard to say.
I'm trying to think of a Pokemon that was sort of off skill in the early gens, and this sort of made them more vital, more relevant.
Well, I think any type that had any Pokemon that had a lot of physical, but had a special type. So if you had a fire type that had a lot of attack, those fire types weren't very good. You needed that special stat, or you needed physical attacks. And before Gen 4, there weren't physical or special attacks except by type. So after Gen 4, fire types got a lot better.
Right. Well, some of them did, some of them didn't.
Yeah.
Is sort of the point.
Well, there's a Pokemon that's worth noting, is Blaziken. If I'm remembering correctly, I think Blaziken had very good attack and special attack, which wouldn't work if they were a pure fire type. However, they were a fire and fighting type, and fighting is almost definitely physical, while fire was special, which meant having both stats was very beneficial to them back in that generation. But nowadays, because of how the game is designed, they can sort of design around those things.
Right.
If you know what I mean.
I know there was pieces where, like, you said fire type, so if you looked at, like, Vulpix versus Ponyta, and I can't remember all the details, is why I haven't really gone into it, but the case is, like, I think Ponyta was more physical, so when the physical special split came in, the Ponyta Rapidash family became more useful because they could have physical fire type moves, whereas prior to that they were locked into the special moves that they couldn't quite utilize.
Yeah.
It's someone like, I think, Electabuzz had a bit of physical, whereas Electric was all special, and so he got an evolution around this time. Like, he became a lot more viable that way as well. Oh, look at that, I just stabbed my own corpse.
Ah, it's okay, they didn't feel it.
They're unconscious, so it doesn't count.
Yep.
Anyway, so that's, like I say, I don't know enough examples. It's really disappointing in myself. Should have done research.
Yeah.
that was a huge change to the way the game was played, and Gen 4 is probably the generation I've played the most. I think that's part of the reason. I have trouble going back to other generations purely because they don't have that. I feel like the game loses a lot of tactical elements when you take that out.
Yeah, the older gens, it isn't as satisfying once you know that level of mechanical depth to go back. But
That's exactly correct. That's
yeah.
why I can't do it. I just couldn't. We were talking the other day about playing gold or silver because we played that a lot when we were younger, and our knowledge is probably around the same. And then we were talking about the difference between that and playing the remakes, the Heart Gold and Soul Silver. And I don't know if I could go back and play the original ones anymore. At least with Heart Gold and Soul Silver, it's got the mechanics upgraded, and I just couldn't bring myself to do that anymore.
It's definitely quite a difference.
I think if you start looking at it, you can't help but look at it in reverse, so you don't see it as Generation 4 starting to enable certain Pokemon because of the physical special split. You start looking at it as going back to an old generation is like disabling you from using some Pokemon. And it's the wrong mentality, sure, but it's hard to shake that notion out of your mind.
Well, there was something else I wanted to talk about for Gen 4, sorry.
Yeah, let's not go back to Gen 1, we'll be here all day.
Boy. And that was, in Gen 4, they did something that I actually very much approve of. Some of it I approve of. They took older Pokemon, and they sort of revisited them. And it's not just that they revisited certain older Pokemon and gave them things. It was sort of they took Pokemon that actually really needed it. Like, for a long time, there was Sneevil, who was an Ice Dark type, which was great. He was very sort of unique and interesting, but he didn't have anything, like, he wasn't very potent later on. He sort of wasn't as relevant, that Pokemon. But then, come Gen 4, they added Weavile, an evolution for Sneevil, and suddenly it became, way better. And they did that for a few of them. I can't remember too many specific examples, but for a few of them, yeah, they brought out a new evolution for them, and it really gave them extra, like, sort of play and attention.
Is this where Magmar and Electabuzz got their evolutions? I know they had them,
so.
But was that in Gen 3 or 4? I forget.
Now that is what I actually wanted to talk about, was them. And how I didn't actually like their evolutions. Their evolutions were, like, in the scheme of things, I didn't like that they required a special item to evolve. I know that was a thing in Gen 2, was you had the Steel Coat and you evolved the Pokemon.
Yes.
And that was novel, but it wasn't very convenient, because it meant you had to get the item, then you had to evolve them, things like that. And yeah, I definitely not a big fan of that mechanic in general.
There are things that you... I get that there are... Sometimes they say, hey, yeah, we want to have some special ways to evolve certain things. I get it. And it's like, you have to work a little bit to get this one to evolve, I get that they want to have some of those, but I think I'm with you. It does get a bit tiresome when there are so many ways and so many things. And they're so, like, unique to each Pokemon. Like, I don't mind the stones because, yeah, anyone can sort of use the stones. But what sucks is when you have, like, say, a specific item can get you a specific Pokemon, and it's like, okay, well, that might be okay for 5 minutes in this version, but...
It also means that, like, to get that Pokemon, you have to get the item, you have to trade it, and then you have to either get it back from that person, or, you have to do the whole game to do it again.
Right.
To get 2 of those. I mean, there is also breeding, so you can probably get something out of that, but it's just something I never particularly liked myself. But I did like that they revisited, Sneevil and Weavile and all those Pokemon.
Sneevil's an interesting one. We mentioned last time, I remember, talking about ice types and sort of lack thereof in the first few generations.
Yeah.
It's good to see them getting a bit of love by now. I mean, where's that Jinx evolution, right? Does it have one yet? Probably not.
Jinx? I don't think so. Still to this day, I don't think Jinx evolves.
Mega Jinx, go.
Oh god.
Dear. Yeah, no, that was cool. What else in Gen 2? Gen 4. One thing I haven't done in Gen 4 that I've kind of done for sort of 2.5 generations is I keep mentioning I've done a good study. It's sort of a study of my own accord on gym leaders and things like that, going through the sequence of them. I haven't quite done that for Gen 4, but I've always found them to be quite, like, it flows well, the gym leaders you have to fight.
Yeah.
They all give you sort of different challenges. They definitely make a lot more use of abilities or certain TMs or traits, and sure, that's always been a thing, but now it's a lot more pronounced, I think. It's easy. Gen 4, it's a lot easier to make teams that revolve around a certain thing.
Who was the first gym leader in Gen 4?
I believe his name is Rock. He's the rock type guy in the mine.
Wow, that's the first one? What the hell?
It seems like a fair way in, but it's not really.
I was just thinking, like, what would you have at that point to fight against him?
Well, that's what I mean. That's what the studies that I usually do are. What does the game give you? And I don't know the answer. I'm pretty sure there's heaps though. I think you can get some fighting types in the caves. You can match him rock for rock because you can go get rocks, things like that.
Or if you get ground or fighting.
There must be some water types that you can get somewhere, I forget.
Well, I think gym leaders deserves their own video. However,
certainly. I don't want to go into it. It was just the thing we've been mentioning in each game.
However, come Gen 5, they do deserve a special mention. And Gen 5 is, I don't know, I guess that's something we really have to talk about. Like, are we at the point where we're done with Gen 4, or?
Alright, so what we do at the end of every generation is, we already sort of mentioned this, is count off all of the styles we can evolve now. So we know there's levels. So you can lead.
Well, you've got day, night, levels, stones. Then you've got trade. You've got trade with an item. You've got the EVs that evolve the stones, the special landmarks. Right. I don't actually know how that happens. I've never done it myself.
Right.
And I never looked into it. That's as many as I can think of.
So we know there was fossils. We're not necessarily just talking about evolution, I guess. We were talking about how to get Pokemon. So there's fossils, breeding, we mentioned. Yep, those unique items that you trade with are definitely things. Is this the first generation with multiple trees of evolution? That's the wrong way to say it.
Are you talking about Slow King? I don't think it's the first generation. I think that was Gen 3 with the bug you could get. Could turn into a...
pronounced now, I guess.
Yeah.
There's quite a handful of Pokemon now where you can get multiple evolutions. I guess you're right. So there was like Blossom and stuff in Gen 2, I believe. But now there's like...
Politoed.
But now it's like there is... what's the crikey, Ninjask or whatever? So it evolves normally, and if you meet special conditions, you get a Ninjask as well. And so
that is also Gen 3.
Ah, is it? Okay, that's fair enough then. I should have mentioned that before. But so it's another thing by this point though. You meet certain conditions, you can evolve a certain way.
Yep.
And just quickly back to the battle, you can see that we are getting wrecked everywhere. And I've mentioned several times now that some of these early games, when they get too hard, Canopus just goes in and kills the leader, and that's how I end the battle. That's what's going to happen here. I would love to have fought those Griffins, but they are killing everything in a couple of hits.
Well, one of the things I noticed about the fight is the enemy team didn't have a healer. Maybe they did up the back, but it didn't look like it.
I sent Canopus up there to shoot her a few times and kind of put her out of the battle. The winged guys are so powerful, it's incredible.
Yeah.
Actually, what I could have done with is a couple extra knights, because you get the healing and they could have tanked more blows, but I haven't really customed the team very much yet. Anyway, go on.
Yeah, Gen 5, eh?
Right. 10 minutes to go.
This is going to be... Gen 5 is easily one of the most loved generations. I don't know, I think it's hard to say. See, right now there's a lot of people who really like Gen 3. Like a lot of people who like it, defend it, talk about how great it is.
Okay.
And that's because we're off the back of a Gen 3 remake. And that's because the people who first played Gen 3, as kids in 2002 or around that time, they've grown up, 10, 12, 14 years later, and they're all older now and adults. And so they have that nostalgia. So right now on the internet, there's a lot of, young people, college age probably, who grew up with Pokemon Gen 3, and a lot of them really like it.
It's like me saying I like Gen 4 because I liked a lot of Gen 2 and I had the remakes and these people. This is aging myself a few years on those people. But I can understand the same sentiment for 3 and 5,
Yeah. However, despite that, Gen 5 I think is one of the overwhelmingly most liked ones. It has, I think is that the one with N? And Dialga and Palkia?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think that's the generation with N. I think. I hope I'm not getting that wrong. Okay, good.
Is Gen 5 Black and White 1 and Black and White 2?
Yes.
Okay, so I've played Black and White 2. So the story is different, and N is referred to, but you barely see him, so he is definitely a big part of the original one.
So the thing about Black and White and Black and White 2 is Black and White is, well, we've said it a lot that we think it's more of a reset rather than anything else.
It definitely feels like a reboot.
Yeah, if you play the game, it is so, like, hand-holdy. I say that without irony. The first gym is, it's basically, it has the opposing type of what your starter is. So if you started with water, it has grass and so on. However, the gym then gives you, before you go in, someone gives you the opposing type of the gym. So if you've got a grass starter, they've got a fire gym, and then someone gives you a water Pokemon before you go in. Completely, like, out of the blue, you just get it for free, and it's a free win against that gym. There's no real challenge in there. You've got the type that beats it almost guaranteed.
Right, so they take the challenge out of exploring and trying to find the right types, right?
Yeah, and then the second gym is a normal gym, I'm pretty sure. And right around the corner from the normal gym, and you are even stopped when you go to the normal gym and told around the corner there are fighting types, and they're good against normal types. And this was a huge letdown for me, because I liked, obviously I liked Gen 1 and Gen 2, and I liked coming across a hard gym and being like, okay, what can you get that's good against this gym?
Yeah, I'm having trouble here.
What can you scrounge up or find? Yeah.
Yep.
And, even when it was like a hard counter, like you could get Diglets before you fought Lieutenant Surge, that was rewarding you for exploring, whereas this was just telling you where to go get the answer. And there's not even like only one Pokemon of that type. There's 2 or 3 of them. There's like 2 or 3 different types of fighting Pokemon there. So you get your pick of the litter on top of it being the hard counter to the gym.
Right.
And well, I guess Ghost would be harder, but it's sort of like, oh, well, couldn't you just let me struggle and figure that out myself?
Yeah, I'm 5 generations in now. I'm used to having to go explore to get what I need.
So in many ways, the gen really feels like it's hand-holding, especially early on. Later on, it gets a little bit better.
They give you that psychic Pokemon early as well, and
yeah,
I don't mind them giving you Pokemon. I actually really like the static Pokemon that they give you, but that one's so early that you almost feel like obligated to use it a bit, and it's sort of like.
Well, you have not only that one given to you, but you already have the elemental one given to you as well.
Right.
So you've got 2 Pokemon given to you that you didn't even have to catch.
Right.
It's half your team can be done by that point.
And it's kind of. I guess what I want is when I have no Pokemon, or I only have like my starter, I want to go and explore and learn and be like, hey, what's this? What's that? Like, what?
Yeah.
I want to go and start picking my team and go, oh, this doesn't really work what I want. I don't want them all given to me, and like you say, me feeling like, hey, it's a set piece Pokemon, I need to try and use it and see what it's like.
Yeah.
I don't like that at all.
Especially not when it's just to beat the thing that you're currently fighting.
Right.
When they do that, that just feels sort of sad.
It's just way too early, that's my problem.
Yeah.
Like, I don't mind if they give you 5-6 Pokemon throughout the adventure, but not first gym, second gym, third gym, and you've got 3 Pokemon already given to you.
Yeah, I think the good contrast to bring this up with is Lapras. Lapras in Gen 1 is given to you for free. It's given to you after you've beaten maybe 5 or 6 gyms. You can have beaten 5 or 6 gyms by that point. And then the reason they give it to you is so that you can use Surf and maybe Strength. Because just in case you don't have a water type that can learn it at that point, they give you one, just in case. And that's fine. Like, that has a place. Whereas these ones, they're sort of giving you stuff to beat what you're fighting, like to overcome challenges that you could probably have overcome without that help pretty handily.
If you
like
just
you didn't
followed the traits
prompting.
of Pokemon games and like, explored a little bit, you could have overcome it.
Now, that being said, I have not played Black and White 2, and from my understanding, Black and White 2, there's a lot more involved in the game, like a lot complexity and depth, like more challenge, I mean. Maybe not more depth, they're the same games, but I heard there's a lot more challenge in it.
It's tough. I mean, I've had one playthrough, and honestly, one playthrough you're just stumbling through, and then it's really only sort of when you go back a second time and you start saying, okay, you start like paying attention to that extra mechanical level of what you can get and what you can do. I found it difficult, but not... I don't know, it's hard to say. I found the early game quite difficult, I think. And then mid to late game, it was more about... I found a lot of Pokemon. Like, I was new. I was like, wow, there's a whole heap of new Pokemon I don't know. And I was like, hey, I want to try this one out. And I was like, I'd get it up to a decent level and be like, nah, this isn't working. Time to change. And I went through a lot of Pokemon that way. So I don't think the late game was hard so much as I wasn't knowledgeable enough, and maybe I didn't put enough thought into it, but I was trying to like craft the perfect team and be really happy with it, and I went through a lot of Pokemon to get there, and so I think the late game got easier though, once I got going.
Yeah, fair enough.
But
I mean,
that doesn't explain,
say
whether you have gym leaders or types. That doesn't say that they were making it too easy for you either. That just means that maybe I'd figured out which Pokemon were good.
Yeah. So I think the point I was trying to get at is, in Gen 5, it felt like a reset to bring in a new audience, and then Black and White 2 felt like sort of a redux of that, and sort of going, okay, we've released Black and White, and new players can get into it, they can learn the game, they can learn all these simple things. Black and White 2 is now released for more of a challenge, if you want to like challenge yourself a little bit more, because why not? That should be how you encourage your players to go, is to master the games after they're done having their fun.
I certainly thought that Black and White 2 was basically what Gen 5 should be in terms of difficulty curve and, you know, the way it plays out. Whereas, so Black and White original was exactly like you said, an intro for people. And Black and White 2 was like, if we hadn't made Black and White, this would have been the natural successor to Gen 4.
Hold on, Dan. I just wanted to point out that this guy, he might be a furry.
He prefers the company of animals to humans.
Yeah. So I'm a little bit... what are you implying about me in saying that I'd like him?
I thought as a person who likes pets, you would like a person who has pets.
Right. Anyway.
He's basically a Pokemon trainer, seriously. He summons griffins and then throws them at you in battle.
The last thing I wanted to say about Gen 5 is Mega Revolutions.
Is that what that came
I don't know.
Oh dear.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm gonna say I don't like
that was
Mega
Gen
Revolutions.
6.
I'm
wrong, it was Gen 6. Nah, let's just not talk about them.
Next time around.
Not never. It's the most... Yeah.
So, we probably got another Pokemon video as we delve into the depths of things we don't know much about. That'd be interesting.
Yay.
Anyway, we'll be onwards. Next time around, next time will be short, and then the one after that will be long in terms of videos, because it's kind of a joint story and I had trouble finding a place to cut it. Other than that, not much else to say. Patch, any outro words?
Thanks for watching.
Alright, cheers guys. See you later.